Thanks to everyone out there for joining us today. I know everyone is very busy with holiday schedules, so I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And the topic, as we already know, is how to target today's LGBTQI travelers. And of course, there are a lot of exciting trends and tactics to talk about, and great news from Australia, for example. So we'll cover as much as we can, and also I hope that we'll have some time for Q&As at the end of the session. A little bit about me. My name is Mark Chesnut, and I'm a New York City-based travel writer, journalist, and content producer. I've written for a number of media outlets, including Photos, Travel Weekly, and the book, 1,000 Places to See Before You Die. And I also write a monthly LGBTQ travel column for Global Traveler magazine, and I contribute to some LGBTQ outlets, including Passport magazine. And I also work with a number of with travel businesses and organizations on custom and branded content. So I've worked with the Mexico Tourism Board, Asiana Airlines, Apple Leisure Group, and other companies. So I hope that my background and experience will help to shed some light on the topic that we're addressing today. Before we start talking about how LGBTQ travelers have changed, let's talk about a little bit about how they used to be. This photo actually shows how I used to be. I was a little redheaded boy with my uncle and my sister about to board that American Airlines prop jet, or maybe I'd just gotten off, I'm not sure. I have my Matchbox car case in tow, and I didn't even know at the time that I was a gay traveler. But since then, I've witnessed the wonderful evolution of the LGBTQ travel market, and my fashion sense has changed a little bit over the years too. So my first tip, if you're going to approach the LGBTQ market, is I'd like you to actually forget that these travelers are LGBTQ for just a moment. And why is that? Because as we know, these travelers, we are incredibly diverse, just like the so-called mainstream market. That means that in order to successfully reach LGBTQ travelers, you've got to consider the diverse market segments within that niche. You can have families with kids, you can have various nationalities and ethnicities, upscale travelers, senior travelers, young travelers. So you need to determine which of these groups within the group are your audience and determine what works best to reach them. An especially effective way to show that you love LGBTQ travelers, especially if you're a so-called mainstream tourism organization or travel-related company, and regardless of the specific segment, is to fully integrate your marketing and advertising efforts. You don't want to hide the fact that you want the LGBTQ business. Now this commercial, and I hope that the video will work okay, is not new, but it's one of my favorite examples of how to integrate your LGBTQ marketing in with your overall mainstream marketing program. So this comes from the city of Las Vegas, the Las Vegas CVB, and let me see if I can make this play.
Hi, we are checking in for the weekend. Welcome. I'll be with you in just one moment. Great.
Hey, I'm gonna go freshen up. I'll be right back.
Okay, I'll be right here.
You gentlemen ready to check in?
So that's a great example of what you can do in order to target LGBTQ travelers while also targeting general travelers. That commercial, it's funny, it attracts your attention. It's the kind of thing that you might want to share, like I just shared with you. And it doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. We can all appreciate that kind of sense of humor and that kind of welcoming approach. So indeed, the fact that this commercial played in so-called mainstream media and works well for both LGBTQ and straight travelers backs up the fact that people can get their LGBTQ travel info from all over the place. On the screen now, you can see a page from my own travel blog, LatinFlyer.com. It's a site that focuses on travel in Latin America. And while it's not a specifically gay site, some of the top-rated articles and posts on the entire site are about gay travel. Here you see a couple examples. Same-sex weddings has been a hot topic, obviously. The hottest gay travel destinations was another big scoring post on the site. And obviously, we know that LGBTQ travelers, we read everything from the New York Times to Condé Nast Traveler to Travel and Leisure. We watch a lot of different television networks and cable networks. And we also read and are exposed to LGBTQ specific magazines, as well as websites and social media and other outlets and channels. So to be successful, you need to broaden your perspective on how to reach these travelers, be inclusive in a general sense. I'd like to also show you some examples of successful strategies from the industry. And since I focus a lot on Latin America, I'm going to show you some samples from that region first. And that's especially interesting, I think, since sometimes people might assume that Latin America would not be as progressive about LGBTQ marketing as destinations in the US, Canada, Europe, or Australia. But they actually certainly can be. Let's take a look at Puerto Vallarta first. A lot of you already know that this is the top international LGBTQ vacation destination in Mexico. And their tourism office has recognized that. They've used very appropriate images and also addressed the diversity of interests of LGBTQ travelers. They know that it's not just about gay bars and nightlife. LGBTQ travelers enjoy lots of different activities. Puerto Vallarta has also used content on their website that speaks to travelers and shows their gay friendliness and sophistication, but they also provide detailed and useful information. They make it easy to find all of that information on their website. Another great example in Latin America is Mexico City. Now, this is one of the world's largest cities. It's also one of my personal favorites. And it's one of Latin America's most progressive when it comes to gay rights. They actually legalized same-sex marriage years ago before Argentina did. Now, the Mexico City website offers a free downloadable LGBT travel guide that's richly detailed, nicely designed, and really fun to look through. The downside at this point is that the guide is a little bit old and it needs an update. And I would personally like to volunteer my services to do that update because I do love Mexico City. But let's look inside. You can find information about LGBT pride and nightlife, as well as neighborhood guides and general travel tips. So again, this recognizes the diverse interests of LGBTQ travelers, and they make it very easy to find all this on their website. Buenos Aires, another example. The capital of Argentina is another great example of a destination that does not hide its gay friendliness. They offer their LGBTQ travel tips in both English and Spanish, and it's easy to find on their website. American Airlines is one of the major mainstream suppliers that's enjoyed a very positive image within the community for a long time. Part of that is because they also share their pro-gay stance publicly with dedicated online and social media content. And of course, hotels have jumped on the bandwagon too. Preferred hotels and resorts, for example, they have what is called the Preferred Pride brand or program, which identifies gay-friendly member hotels in their consortium in a variety of destinations. Preferred Pride and also Hilton Hotels and Resorts, which you can see here, they're both good examples of how you can expand your product lines and campaigns to include LGBTQ travelers, both as part of so-called mainstream campaigns, as well as with highly targeted content online or in advertising. And again, you can see here that appropriate visuals play a key role. And there are always new ways to reach your audience, of course. Custom content is a big one. Sometimes it has a lot of different names, actually. So you may know it as branded content, sponsored content, integrated media. There's a ton of different names, but it's used heavily now by a lot of advertisers. I actually write a lot of sponsored content for both business to business and consumer media outlets, and I work with a variety of clients. But I think there's still room for growth, and particularly within the LGBTQ segment. I don't think it's been explored as much as it could. Sponsored content actually helps to cut through the clutter of advertising by providing interesting and informative and sometimes entertaining or even funny content, things that will really catch travelers' attention. And it's a great way to differentiate yourself and show your leadership role in the industry on certain topics and types of travel. This list shows some of the possibilities for custom content, and I'd be happy to speak more with any of you afterwards about this in more detail. A couple recent examples of LGBTQ sponsored content. A while back, I participated in an individual trip to Island House. That's on the left. You can see the logo and the website. It's a gay male hotel in Key West, Florida. And the primary purpose of my visit was just so that I could share photos, videos, and images via Instagram and other social media outlets. So it's a tactic for creating engaging and fun visuals and content that people look at and want to share. especially if it's good-looking people in their bathing suits. People do love that, don't they? Another example, which is on the right, this one is in the business-to-business category. The Mexico Tourism Board recently sponsored this Mexico LGBTQ travel guide, which ran in Travel Weekly. And I work with Travel Weekly and a variety of clients to create content, all of which aims to help travel agents and tour operators to sell more of specific destinations and services and companies. And this is just a great example of how to do that within the LGBTQ segment, because obviously we know that it's not just about appealing to consumers. You also, depending on what your business is like, you may want to appeal to travel agents or wholesalers or tour operators. So those two examples of very different media approaches leads me to my next tip for anyone looking to reach more travelers. You need to know your media. Excuse me, you need to know your media. I get choked up when I talk about media. And there are lots of different platforms out there to carry your message. So do your research. Which ones do your current clients and customers use? Which ones do your dream customers use? How can you use those media outlets and platforms and social media channels to transmit your message? You can even do, if you're a small business or company or organization, you can just do informal surveys of your guests or of your clients to keep your hand on the pulse of what they're using. You've also got to create really good content, whether it's for an ad or for your own website, or whether it's branded content or journalist coverage in a magazine or a website. So it's a good idea to keep in mind what travelers as well as travel writers like me love. These are just a few things. We are looking for trends. We're looking for useful information, not just information talking about how great your company is or your destination is. Things that are believable, real news, cool visuals, and shareable moments and content. Now, speaking of shareable moments, this is a great example of that. This was from a couple years ago, so you may have already seen this. This lesbian couple you see in the photograph, they got married on board an Air New Zealand flight from Queenstown to Auckland. And this is the kind of stuff that people love. It's happy, it's good news, and it's a great way to get your product or service in front of a wider audience. So think creatively. Providing valuable resources and information is another way to engage your travelers. Preferred Pride, which I mentioned before, related to Preferred Hotels and Resorts, they're among the companies that have offered useful travel tips that aren't even related directly to their own products and services. That's a good thing to keep in mind. So don't be afraid to create content and share stuff that's just plain helpful or just plain entertaining. You may have a small hotel with limited services and little budget, but there's no reason why you can't also share some general travel tips for the city where you're located. Showcase your knowledge and expertise by helping travelers to have a better overall experience, and they will love you for it. Also, you can listen to your employees. Now, this obviously is something that's much more visible if you're a big company like Marriott or like American Airlines, but we know that everyone likes to patronize businesses that treat their employees well, right? So Marriott makes it very public how it respects its LGBTQ employees, and that makes it more obvious that they'll treat guests well too. You also need to keep your eyes open for new growth opportunities. So I'd like to talk a bit about one of the biggest areas of growth for the LGBTQ travel market, and that is same-sex weddings and honeymoons. Same-sex marriage is legal in more places now than ever. We know Australia just joined the proud ranks on that one. So this is reason to celebrate for sure. And it's also another reason for those of us in the travel industry to sell more travel. This map highlights some of the places where you can be selling same-sex weddings and honeymoons. This is not the most recent map, unfortunately. It has not been completely updated, so you'll see that Australia isn't fully blue here, but all of the darker colors represent good opportunities for growth in this particular segment. I also want to flip the discussion a bit for a few minutes to talk about how LGBTQ travel is also great for straight people. And so while you may be going after LGBTQ travelers, you might just also expand your reach beyond that and attract some additional mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream or straight travelers as well. So let's talk about that. Greater acceptance for LGBTQ rights around the world has resulted in more acceptance of LGBTQ travelers and advertising, as well as more integration into the so-called mainstream marketplace. It's also brought more straight allies into the LGBTQ travel arena, and that's good news for everyone. In other words, you just might find yourself that straight people are enjoying travel in the past that would have been thought mostly as a gay travel in the past. So what types of straight people might seek out gay and gay-friendly travel companies and suppliers? Here are a few descriptions: open-minded, educated, well-traveled, middle-aged, senior citizens, young, millennials. It's a broad group of people. And that's a good thing too, because it creates more opportunities for those of us in the travel industry. Here's why straight people might enjoy gay travel experiences. First, it's fun and it's comfortable. Just look at how many straight people you might see on the street in the summer in Provincetown. Now that is integration. Gay travel can also offer a high quality and less touristy experience. An example: my sister, who's a straight woman, recently went on vacation in Scotland, and she stayed with her husband, and they both stayed at a gay-owned and operated bed and breakfast in Edinburgh. They loved the experience. Why? Because they loved the insider travel tips they got from the owner and the hotel's relaxed vibe and more authentic feel than if they were staying at some cold and calculated chain hotel. So there are selling points for the gay travel experience within the straight market. Also, by patronizing LGBT-friendly businesses, you can also support causes that you care about. And that's something that applies to every traveler, doesn't it? It's a big reason why it's a good idea to share what you as a business do in the community. You can also save money by patronizing LGBTQ businesses and organizations. And since you're effectively expanding the potential base of goods and services that are available, travelers have a greater choice out there. And so they're going to want to make their choices based on a variety of factors, and it's up to you to make sure that they know what they need to know about your business. LGBTQ travel can even be a good approach for business travel. An example of this overlap I discovered during a recent trip to San Francisco. I stayed at a place called Parker Guest House, which is a mostly LGBTQ bed and breakfast in the heart of San Francisco, in the Castro district, actually. My husband and I met a straight businesswoman who was staying there. She travels a lot for work, but whenever she visits San Francisco on a business trip, she always prefers to stay at that particular gay guest house. She says she feels safer there, and she also says she gets a more welcoming and personalized experience. So if you have a small business that's primarily targeted at LGBT travelers, don't forget about the other half. Don't forget about the straight people too, because that can provide even more opportunities. And this also leads me to suggest how gay-specific businesses can turn the tables and actually advertise their straight friendliness. That's what the Highlands Resort, what you see here, it's a very small hotel, very cute, in California's Russian River Valley. That's what they do on their website. So while mainstream businesses might want to make a point to advertise their gay friendliness, you can also find that the gay-specific hotels, LGBTQ properties and businesses in general, might want to advertise their straight friendliness. So that wraps up my main part of the presentation. We've covered a lot of territory in just a short amount of time, and I do speak rather quickly, so I apologize for that. But I'm open now if anyone has any questions, or if all of my contact information is here as well, if you'd like to follow me or contact me afterwards to discuss any topics further. So any questions at all?
Okay, that was great. Thank you so much, Mark. So as Mark said, we will be taking questions now. So in case you haven't been to one of these webinars before and don't know how, I just need you to raise your hand to ask a question. So you can do that by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of your screen there, and then clicking on the raise your hand button. And then, of course, I'll unmute you and you can ask Mark your questions.
I know it's we're approaching the holiday period, so a lot of people are very busy with shopping and making their New Year's Eve plans. So a lot of us are not thinking quite as much about business right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you guys a little bit more time to think while I ask one of my own. So we talked a lot about content in places that are very LGBT friendly. So, however, I'm wondering, what are your tips for those wanting to target travelers through content in countries that, you know, aren't so LGBT friendly and modern?
That's a very good question. And the good thing is obviously that with the internet and social media makes that easier than ever before. So for example, there are, even in countries where there may not be specifically LGBTQ media like magazines or even, news sites or anything like that, Facebook, for example, exists just about everywhere. And so, you can go to, a lot of countries where you may not see a lot of LGBTQ media on a large scale. You can still connect with travelers via Facebook, via Instagram also, using hashtags to search a few things and find out what people are following in various countries. So I would say social media can be a good way to reach them. Also via YouTube, for example. I've known of some companies that have had success with YouTube. And also, if you're targeting a country that may not have a lot of LGBTQ specific media, charting those travelers using social media in their own language, whatever language may be, that can be a good way, because frequently in some countries they may not have a lot of access to information in their own language. So you might want to target and really specifically create content for that market. Like, for example, if Brazil is a huge country, it's a huge market, and there is gay media there. But they're used to being inundated with things that aren't necessarily in Portuguese. So if you want to go after a really big market like Brazil, you need to invest some time and money and effort into creating content in Portuguese to really meet that market.
Right, absolutely, that makes sense. So for for example, we talked about how Australia has only just legalized same-sex marriage. So say you had a business here, how would you kind of, jump on the back of the momentum that we have currently?
That's a really good point, because it really, when something happens like that, like same-sex marriage being legalized, it really does open up a sudden rush of interest and opportunity for people in the travel industry. So yeah, I'm sure probably in Australia it's going to happen similarly to how it's been happening in other countries where the same thing has happened. So I think you want to step back and obviously analyze the market and analyze what is your place in that particular segment. So whether if you're a tour operator or a wedding organizer, a wedding planning company, or if you're a hotel that wants to attract LGBTQ honeymooners, first identify what your role would be, how you can serve that market, whether they're honeymooners or they actually somebody might want to have a destination wedding working with you. What are the services you provide? And then how can you connect? There are gay wedding registry listings. There are gay, wedding service provider websites and things like that, where it would be a good idea to maintain a presence there. And you want to be able to show your expertise in the market, your respect for that particular segment, and be creative, because I've seen some advertising that's and some custom content, that's kind of boring in that segment, where they're kind of just plugging and playing and saying that they do gay weddings, but they're not really getting me excited with their visuals or their content. So really create the excitement and show, getting married or going on a honeymoon is a big event in anyone's life. So capture the excitement and put it out there via social media or on your website and in listings. But you want to capture the excitement, and right now, especially in Australia, because I think there's going to be a lot of interest in people tying the knot in Australia from around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes sense that, we're going to have to be super creative in order to just not be part of the noise. We talked about how to target travelers in countries that aren't so LGBT friendly. And then, of course, you're not going to have that kind of level of noise. So while it's kind of a harder market to get into, you've also got less competition. But then in Australia, of course, at the moment, I think people are really gearing up to be in that competition. So while the content may be similar, it's a very, very different market, I guess.
Right. I think it'll be interesting. It's so exciting, to see what's happened in Australia just now. And it will be interesting to see how the destination wedding and the honeymoon market develops out of same-sex marriage being legalized, because it's a dream destination already, which is a big advantage that a place like Australia already has. So I think that there's going to be increasing excitement for destination weddings and honeymoons there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I hope I get to see a lot of it. So, well, I guess it looks like there aren't any more questions. It's just me this time.
That's fine. Well, you've had amazing questions, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate those of you who have joined us. And of course, if anyone's listening to this, watching this after the fact, they can certainly contact me or contact Travel Massive with follow-up questions, and we can always get back to anyone.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Mark. So I guess it's time to leave it here then. So thank you so much for presenting, and thank you to everyone who came along. So of course, don't forget to sign up for our January webinars as well. And I guess I'll see you all in the new year. So happy holidays, everyone, and see you next time.
Thanks very much. Have a good day, everyone.